Hello and welcome to Being a Singing Teacher. This is part one of a series of videos that I'm putting together to help you explore what's entailed, what you need to know and what skills you need to have and how you can decide whether or not this is the right thing for you. So my name is Hilton. I'm the founder and one of the trainers at BAST Training, and let me get you started with today's video. So you might have been thinking about becoming a singing teacher for some time. Maybe it's just occurred to you that actually this is a great way of some extra income. Maybe you're shifting from one place in your life to another and now you don't want to be performing as much. And so how do you then replace the income that you were earning as a performer? Whatever the reason and whenever you decided it, it doesn't matter. I'm going to delve into it a little bit more so that you can make an informed decision about whether this is the right pathway for you and what you can do next. So in this video, we're going to look at the questions you should be asking yourself before taking the singing teacher path. We're also going to cover the advantages and disadvantages of being a singing teacher. And then also we're going to explore why students might be looking for a singing teacher in the first place. If you've not really thought very seriously or even started teaching singing, it might be worth visualizing what does finding success as a singing teacher mean to you? How will it impact your life? How will it transform your personal life and your work life, your day-to-day? It's going to be different for everybody. But I think it's really worth spending a little bit of time thinking about what does it mean to be successful as a singing teacher. It might mean that you're being able to supplement your income. It might mean that you're able to replace your income. It might mean that you can afford more things. It might mean that you can pass on your passion for what you do to other people, and that feels very good to be able to help others. There may be all sorts of reasons. It might mean that you're able to travel more, because sometimes with teaching you can actually travel. It might mean that you have more variation in the day. It might mean that you can work when you choose to, as opposed to when other people choose to. There's all sorts of things that are going to be personal to you. And when you're thinking about making a change or finding a new path or going in a particular direction with certain goals, it's always good to have a strong visual idea about where you want it to take you. Now, things might change along the way, that's absolutely fine. But if you have a strong goal at the beginning and an emotional connection to that, then it's going to be more likely that you'll succeed. So just before I delve into some of the questions, a little bit about myself. So I started off on an instrument. I was played clarinet for 10 years. I also sang in church. It was more like just something I did because I could. And whilst I loved singing and music, I didn't think it was a real job. And so I went off and trained as a nurse. And I really loved nursing, but I didn't like the environment in terms of working for other people. I didn't like the culture, and as we all know, it's become a very difficult job. And whilst it wasn't as challenging as it is now for nurses and doctors, it definitely was on its way. And also I had returned at some point back to music and singing and realized this is where I really wanted to focus my life on. So I initially trained in classical, and then I moved over to jazz, which was actually what my passion was. I just didn't know how to do it, and eventually I found a teacher who helped me. And then I realized this is where I really wanted to forge a career. And in particular, I was interested in teaching. So I did a degree in music education with a jazz component. And then I started teaching. I also was performing for about 12 years. I performed mainly pubs, restaurants, parties, private events, that sort of stuff, doing jazz. I lived in New York for a little while, pursuing the jazz performing career. But then I realized that actually teaching was where I had my biggest passion. So I decided to move over from Australia to London, and I set up my teaching practice there. So I've been teaching on and off between 1997 and 2003, and then 2003 was when I made the decision that that's really where I wanted to focus my career, was as a teacher. So that's when I moved over to the UK and set up my studio, and very quickly built up a very successful studio, which eventually took me on to being head of vocals at a music school, a contemporary music school. And when I left there, I went back to my studio and then decided that I wanted to focus on building my business, and I became quite entrepreneurial. That was sort of around 2011. And it was around that time that I got approached by some students at the college where I was the head of vocals, asking for help to teach them how to become private singing teachers. And so BAST was born then. It wasn't called BAST at that time, and it was only 5 hours, but and you'll find out in one of the future videos what the course is all about. Anyway, so I was teaching privately. I was working with professional and semi-professional singers, people who were touring, people who were working with major artists, people who were signed, also artists who wanted to go and take that pathway, as well as serious hobbyists. And then I was also running workshops and building sort of my business. At some point, I thought, let's have a magazine for singers. So I published I Sing Mag, which is still around in some form. We created and published 21 issues, which I'm very proud of, but it wasn't very profitable. In fact, it wasn't profitable at all. And so I decided I should drop that and focus more on other sides of my business. So I then also, sometime in this period, I went and did a master's in performing arts medicine. So I was able to bring together my nursing and my education and performance into sort of under this one umbrella. And I also trained as a clinical hypnotherapist, because I realized with my private clients that a lot of the work I was doing was mindset work. I do a lot of guest speaking and lecturing. I'm a BAPAM educational trainer. BAPAM stands for British Association of Performing Arts Medicine. If you ever need some health and wellbeing help, then have problems with your voice or anything that's impacting your ability to perform or sing, then I highly recommend BAPAM if you're UK based. I deliver a lot of content for other people. So I've done stuff for Sing Space, for VIP, Vocology and Practice, Vocal Health, First Aid. So you might see me giving different types of lectures in various places. And I go to universities and colleges, and I also do industry events as well, where I talk on things like vocal health and mindset and performing arts medicine and resilience building. So I'm quite broad, quite a big sort of portfolio of career, and this puts me in a really good place to help singing teachers develop in a much more holistic manner. So let's delve into the questions you could be asking yourself before you start teaching or following this pathway. So what are the advantages of being a singing teacher? You may have already thought about some financial ones, because it's obviously a great way to earn some extra income. Or if you're transitioning into leaving performing or reducing the amount of performances you do, then it could actually replace your income. Also, it means that you can charge your rates. You can set your own fees. That can sometimes be also problematic, but that's something that we help people with. How do I set my rates? But the reality is that you can set your own rates when you're teaching privately. You can share your experience and your knowledge with others and help them to pursue singing and performance and maybe even a career. You'll also obviously be able to decide when you want to work. So if you want to work during the day or the evening or just the weekends, then that's up to you, because it's your business and you choose when you want to work. So also, it's related to what you're already doing. So a lot of performers end up doing jobs that aren't related to what they're doing, and they can find that either boring or very unmotivating. But at least as a singing teacher, you're still involved in what you're passionate about, which is singing and performance. Also, it means that you're going to be continuing to improve yourself, because you'll find as you start teaching, there's lots of questions that pop up that you hadn't thought about. You may have discovered many things about your own voice and performance, and through your experience and your own knowledge building, you've been able to fix issues in yourself. But when you get students coming in, you'll find that there's all sorts of different types of issues that people experience that you may not have experienced. So you are then forced to go out and find out more. So that's going to build your knowledge and improve your skill sets as well, and maybe even improve your own technique. It's a great way to network and to build a community of people. So if I look at my lovely community, many of them have come from people who were students with me right in the beginning. And so I've, since 2003, there are quite a few people in my life still in my network who I worked with when they were students, and then they were interested in teaching, and they've gone off and forged their own career. So I love my community of singing teachers and singers, and it couldn't have happened if I hadn't been a singing teacher. So what about disadvantages? I hate to say it, but there are some. But if we understand it, we can either prepare better for it, or we can, make sure that these things don't impact us severely. So being a singing teacher can be quite lonely. If you're running your own teaching practice, you've got students coming in, yes, but you're there to serve them. And also, you haven't got colleagues necessarily that you can be talking about various issues with, or just getting some help. So it can be very lonely, and you need to be quite self-motivated in order to continue to build your business by yourself. And many people have never run their own business, and so it requires some sort of business acumen so that you can do the admin, do the scheduling, the marketing. You might have to do, especially in the beginning, do the bookkeeping, tax paying. Some of this you may already have been doing as a freelancer singer, of course, but when you're building a business, there's a lot more going on. You might even be renting somewhere to teach, and so you have to think about covering overheads and insurance and business rates, all sorts of things that you may never have had to deal with before. The other thing about being a singing teacher is it's time for money. So you don't get paid if you're not actually teaching. And of course, that's problematic if you get a cold, or if you're ill, or something happens, in your personal life and you can't go and teach. Now that means that's your source of income that's cut off. So one of the reasons why I decided to build my business the way I have is because I wanted to earn income even when I wasn't necessarily working in terms of like physically present. It does take time to build a good financial turnover, but it's not impossible. So when I got started, I would say it probably took me about 2 years to get to a place where I was at the financial income that could sustain me in the way that I wanted. But it might not take you 2 years. It just depends how good you are at marketing. The other thing is that work can fluctuate. So if you're working in particular with singers who come from the hobby sector, or who are children, or who are parents, then say, for instance, holidays like summer and Easter, then you might find a drop in your customer level. And so that means that your income will drop. So how do you mitigate that? It is a big commitment to say that you're going to help someone develop their voice. It can't be done on 1 or 2 sessions. It needs to be ongoing, and it might take months, even years, for a voice to be developed, depending on their age and what their issues are, and how much practice they're doing as well. And so you need to be prepared to deliver that commitment. Now, if you are a singer who's going to continue working, touring and doing gigs, or prioritizing that, it's not a major problem, but you need to consider your timetable in terms of how do you make sure that that you're regularly available for your students, but also that you're not using your voice so much that it's going to impact your performance and your singing. So if you're teaching all day Friday and then you go and do a 2 or 3 hour gig on Friday night, that's a big workload for your voice. And so you need to consider, how do you spread that out if you're going to continue singing? And many people do, by the way. It's not that you shouldn't, it's just that it's a consideration. The other thing is that if you're going to be away, so if you're the sort of performer that does a lot of away gigs, and it's going to interrupt with your availability for your students may not like that, because they might like their regular schedule and they want to come along every week and they want to be developing and they want to feel like they're being focused on, because that's what they're paying you for. And so you might either need to warn the students when they first start that this is how it might be. And you know what? Some students might really appreciate that, because they want to be what you are, and so they want to be learning from someone who's out there doing it. So it can work, but you need to consider it. The other thing is that if you really focus on singing, teaching, you might find that you're singing less yourself. There's all sorts of reasons for it. Sometimes people who go down the avenue of teaching and learning all about it lose the passion for singing, and that can definitely happen. Or you become paranoid about what you're doing and whether you're doing it correctly. And a lot of singers are sort of perfectionists and want to be perfect before they go out and do anything. And that's a mindset that definitely needs working on, by the way, because it's not necessary to be perfect and know it all. But it is definitely something I've noticed, and I noticed in myself as well, that the more I started to delve into technique, the less I was working on my own voice and doing that, practicing and developing my voice, but I wasn't going out and performing as much. I don't know if that was just a coincidence, because it might have been an age thing as well. Anyway, it's just something to think about. And so therefore it's not always creative. So if you're a very creative performer and singer, and maybe you're a songwriter as well, you might find that you're not working on your own creativity as much. You're more focused on other people's, and that can sometimes be demotivating. And so you have to figure out, how do I balance that? There's not as much educational courses and support out there as I think there should be. It's definitely improving here in the UK. I can't talk for every other country, but it's not as good as it is in other areas and other fields. So you do have to look around to find education and support specifically as a singing teacher. The other thing that we have to think about is that we're dealing with somebody's dreams. We're also dealing with their vocal health, and it's a big responsibility. So having that knowledge and understanding of what it means to sing in a healthy manner, and how to assess a voice and how to address the issues and to recognize when there's a problem, then the more educated you are on that, then the more safer you're going to be able to teach. It does require suitable space and certain equipment. So you need to consider that. Do you have somewhere that you can teach that has the kind of equipment that you need in order to be a singing teacher? Obviously, a piano or keyboard is a good starting point, but there are other things which you need to consider. And also, if you're teaching online, then how is your setup, and have you got a suitable keyboard that you can play so that people can hear through Zoom? Do you know how to use Zoom in that manner, understanding that you can't play at the same time as someone sings on Zoom because of the delay? I think maybe one day that won't be a problem, but right now it still is. And also, you'll be using computers and IT and sound equipment, and especially if you're in the contemporary world. And so being more confident with that sort of technology will help you in teaching. So there's some of the disadvantages. So why do people seek a singing teacher in the first place? There are actually quite a lot of reasons, and some of them might surprise you. There's the obvious ones, like they want to sing, they enjoy music, and they have certain songs that they want to learn and to be able to sing. And so they're going to come to a singing teacher to learn how to do that. Some people may have already recognised that they've got some vocal issues and they're looking for someone who can help them fix that. So they might already be doing some singing, like in a choir or out as a hobbyist, doing singer-songwriter nights, that kind of thing. And they're recognising that their voice isn't lasting, or maybe they've got sort of a gap somewhere in their range. They're not able to get the high notes, the low notes. There's all sorts of technical issues that they might seek a singing teacher for. It might be because they want to take it up as a hobby, to go and join a local choir, and so they just want to gain more confidence with their voice. It might be because they've actually had some vocal injury or maybe an operation on their voice, and now they want to get back to singing in a safe and accurate way so that they don't get injured again. It might be because they're auditioning and they need help to get ready for the audition. And that could be anything from auditioning for a music school or performing arts school, auditioning for some sort of stage performance, or auditioning for a television competition, whatever it is. Auditioning can be, for all sorts of reasons. Maybe they are doing it because they are a semi-professional or a professional, and they just notice that their voice is not dealing with the work requirements as much, and so they're coming to you to get their voice balanced and stronger. It might be actually, if they're already signed or working professionally, that someone has sent them along to get their voice sorted out because someone's told them to, or it might be because someone feels like it's good for their mental health. So I definitely had a couple of students that used to come to me who had depression, and singing was just a way of changing, that feeling of depression. And of course, we know that singing is very good for mental and physical health. Or maybe they're a singer-songwriter and the writing is their strength, but singing isn't, and so they're wanting to develop that. There are all sorts of reasons, and there's probably more that I haven't even mentioned. And of course, what is our role as the singing teacher? Well, we're here to help feed that passion for wanting to sing, for wanting to be involved in music, for joining a choir, for finding a reason to get up in the morning. And we're also there to fix any pain. Now, the pain might not be physical pain. It might be the pain of, that big gap that they have in their range, or the pain of not being able to reach that note, or the pain of not feeling confident to go and audition or to go and join a choir. So that's really all our job is either feeding that passion or fixing that pain. And we do that in a variety of different ways. So that's it for now. Join me in the next video where I will continue to help you understand what you need to think about before you start teaching.